Hey guys, my name is Fan Fantasy, or you can call me Fan, and I mainly cover tactical and immersive games. In this video today, we're doing something new on my channel, and we're doing an interview with a special guest named John, who's also known as Husky Actual. He's currently in the Canadian Armed Forces as a qualified Leopard 2 driver, loader, and gunner. He's currently serving his 5th year service, and he's currently posted at the Royal Canadian Armour Corps School. You can also check him out on YouTube as the Real Armor Guy. Would you like to say hello to our viewers?
Hey everyone, I'm here. I'm here to do this interview, and I'm super excited to tell you about what I do.
All right. Would you like to tell us about yourself and why did you join the Canadian Armed Forces?
Fan, you already said it. My name's John. I'm 25 years old, from Mississauga, Ontario. Grew up with 2 Italian parents. I have 2 older sisters, and worked hard my entire life. I joined the CAF because I always wanted to join the military or do something regarding the military, and so I took a leap of faith, and now I'm here in the CAF, and no regrets.
Nice. And so, where are you currently at in your career?
So right now in my career, I'm currently posted at the Royal Canadian Armour Corps School as a corporal. I'm mostly as a training aide, so I drive on courses or I help on courses. And then right now I know I just got promoted, but I do want to get my PLQ and get into a leadership position at some point in my career, and obviously lead new troops wherever I may go.
So, I do have an important question before we actually go into the main questions. What do you prefer, Canadian individual meal packs or the American MREs, and why?
So the Canadian ones are like hands down better, hands down, and
Why is that?
they just taste better. So I'll give you a little story. So I'm on Exercise Maple Resolve, and I'm pretty acquainted with the Canadian IMPs. So we wanted to try something new, and there was an American. We call them OJTs, but it basically referees to make sure if you shoot someone, their vest works. Blah blah blah. Like with lasers, obviously not real ammunition.
Right.
It's basically a big game of laser tag, and we had an American OCT that was there, and he had a whole bunch of American MREs in the back. So we ended up doing a little bit of a trade, and we traded him, I believe, salmon, and he gave us pizza. So I wanted to try it, and I was like, you know what? Why not? Pizza sounds pretty cool. I mean, like they can't really screw up pizza,
Right.
and my God, can they screw up pizza? It was like I opened it, and like, do you know when you get a piercing and you have a little bit of there's no other way to tear it but ear cheese.
Right.
Um, that's what it smelled like. It smelled like you opened it up and it was just ear cheese, and I was already like disgusted. And I took a bite, and all you tasted was like rotten cheddar. It tasted like rotten cheddar, and I almost puked on
That's
top of the
gross.
tank. Oh, it was so bad, and I like threw it into I literally threw it in the middle of the forest. I'm like, this thing is garbage, and my whole crew's like, was it really that bad? I'm like, yeah, it was that bad. The only thing that I think is actually worth eating in an American MRE from a Canadian perspective is they have these crackers, and the crackers are like ginormous, and they're delicious.
Just crackers.
Just literally just the crackers. They were
Wow.
delicious. There's some like hot sauce in there, some like hot cheddar sauce. They have like
Right.
some blueberry dessert. But no, just the crackers for me.
Oh man, that's kind of sad, but maybe for those who have tried the MREs can let us know if that's true or not. But yeah. So yeah, I wanted to ask, like, what made you decide to be an armored soldier in the Canadian Armed Forces? Was it by choice? Like, did you want it to be an armored soldier, or like did the recruitment officer told you to do that?
Well, it wasn't really that they told me I have to go armored. So when I did my interview and they asked me what 3 jobs I wanted, I put all combat arms. So I put
Hmm.
um, armored, infantry, artillery, and I sent it away. And I was like, I want to go combat arms, and that's what I want to do. So 8 months go by, and I get a call, and they're like, "Hey, man, do you want to go armored?" And I'm like, "Sure." And that's literally how I became an armored crewman. It was just because they called me with that job offer first.
Nice. What was your first choice? Was it armored or infantry?
My first choice was infantry.
Well, now you're an armored soldier, so
Yeah,
that's
now I kind of laughed now because whenever you see the infantry falling behind you and they fall in a tank rut and they're just miserable and you're just in your tank with hopefully your heat works, um, and you're just seeing them just get all soaked and like their faces when they see a tank show up to help them and destroy the enemy is like priceless because they literally it looks like they just saw like whatever god they worship just come down from the sky and just destroy everything.
oh, that's awesome. Well, is there AC in the Leopard too?
Oh no. Oh no. There's no
Really?
AC, but in the no, there's no AC. There's only heat and no heat. Uh, with the A6, there's a chiller vest that you can wear that was used in Afghanistan that actually takes up a little bit of ammo storage and it goes into the back. But you put this vest on and it circulates cold water around your body, and that's how you get cooled in the early when we were in Afghanistan.
Right, right. I read about that part, so that's a very interesting way of cooling down. And so, since you're part of the armored regular force, what's the difference between like a regular and reserve unit?
The regular units basically are so you have three regular units across Canada. So you have
Mm,
the Royal Canadian Dragoons, which I'm part of. Then you have 12 RBC, which is Régiment Blindé du Canada, which is the French armored regiment, and then you have the Straconas, which is which is the premier tank regiment of Canada. So I believe
uh,
they have three squadrons of tanks and a reconnaissance unit where it's the other way around for dragoons. So you have your A, B, and D squadron, which is reconnaissance or cavalry now, and your D squadron is dismounted, and then C squadron is an amalgamation between 12 RBC and Royal Canadian Dragoons in a tank squadron. So C squadron belongs to RCD, but it's manned by both 12 RBC and 12 RBC and RCD in Gagetown.
so is it shared
Um,
or
it's shared. It's shared between the two regiments. Um, the main difference between like reserve and reg force is training, right? It's because you're in the reg force, you're getting more training
right?
value. You get to play with a lot more kit, bigger budget, uh, equivalent to what the budget we have now, and also the vehicles. So the reserves only use Tab Vs or G wagons. Tab V is dependent on what regiment you go to, whereas with the Reg Force you can get Coyote, which are being phased out.
Mm.
Uh, Tab V, you can get Leopard, you can get Lav 6. There's and even T Lav, which is an M113A3 that's upgraded, and that's what we use in the echelon.
How excited were you when you first heard that you were gonna be a tank driver? And what was the process like to be a qualified with the Leopard?
So C Squadron only had tanks, and I picked them because if I ever wanted to go back to Ontario, which is where my base is, like Petawawa, but we're just posted in Gagetown, that was my best bet because my family all lives in Ontario.
Hmm.
Or if I just wanted to be with tanks, I'd go Strat.
Right.
So I knew at some point I was going to get my DNM qual, which is your driver qual for Leopard 2.
Hmm.
It took like I think 3 months before they actually loaded me on a course, and then we did the first half of it in December, and then the second half after we came back from Christmas leave. And so it was 6 to 8 weeks of the first two weeks were like theory and learning all the ins and outs and maintenance, and then the last couple of weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, was driving with implements on and all this other stuff. And so you spend quite a bit of time knowing more about maintenance and then
Hmm.
actually driving it, which is a good thing because they tend to break a lot.
Right.
But you still get plenty of driving time.
So for in terms of learning how to drive, like did you do like online simulations on how to drive the Leopard
No, it was all in real life.
in real
So
life?
we would get assigned like 3 to 4 tanks, and two crews, and we had two other tanks as backup just in case those two other tanks broke. And so we would fix them in the morning and then go out on a drive. We go to this thing called the driving circuit, which is a huge obstacle course, and we just drive that or drive into the training area and do all these crazy black track trails. And we would just spend hours doing that. And I mean like hours. Like I'd be home at like probably like 8 o'clock at night, and we'd
Wow.
start at like 7 in the morning, and we really teared up that training area. Like we made some trails, we went down some paths we weren't supposed to go through, but it was quite honestly like your first time in a tank driving it, you feel invincible, and then you
Nice.
fix it, and then you feel invincible when you get home.
Right. And like, what is it like to drive the Leopard?
It depends on the variant. The A4 that we use, it's not deployable, but it's more of it's a training tank.
Okay.
So the A4 I find is a lot more comfortable to drive because the A4M and the A6M have a swing seat, so for IEDs. So when it explodes, your butt's not on the floor when the mine goes off.
Hmm.
Plus, with all the extra armor, so the A4 has an actual like think of like a go kart seat, kind of
Okay.
looks like that, and it folds up and down and whatnot, where you can like pull your seat back, not by much, but like you can kind of adjust it. Whereas the A4M and the A6M, you really can't.
Hmm.
And if you're really tall, not really tall, but like taller than the average tank driver, you're pretty screwed
Hmm.
because like it's a pretty uncomfortable seat. Like it's good for protection, but it's in terms of drivability, it's like it's just not for me.
You're talking about the different variants like the A4, A4M, and the A6M. And of course we like the Canadian Forces have these different variants. So aside from what you just mentioned, what are the major differences and significance of these variants?
So the A4 is the oldest model that we have. Basically, just uses training for mill for the crews. It's
Hmm.
the easiest to maintain. There's not a, it's all hydraulic turret. Um, has first generation thermals. Protection isn't adequate. It still carries that L44 120. In terms of inside, the electronics are quite different. Obviously,
Are
it's
they
an
a lot
older
older?
fire. Yes, it's
Right.
an older fire control system on the A4, whereas the A4M, which is actually more modern than the A6M, they have, well, at least just for the A4M, it has the Attica sight, which has a better upgraded thermal and better protection for the crew in terms of mine protection and add-on armor in terms of on the front and then in the cheeks. Basically, underneath, it's still an A4, but it has all the upgrades that would make it more lethal. Better fire control system, better target acquisition, and the A6 is basically it's an A4M, but not really. Like it has a better fire control system, but still has the same thermals as an A4, but with a longer gun, the L55. The biggest difference is the A4 has a hydraulic turret, whereas the A4M and the A6M are all electric turrets.
Oh.
Um,
What's the
yes.
difference on that?
So with hydraulic turrets, you have to warm up the hydraulics by every single morning. You have to spin the turret around,
Hmm.
depress and elevate the gun, and it's a lot more maintenance. Whereas an electric turret, you can it's a lot less maintenance and it's a lot easier to
Hmm.
maintain. And that's basically the difference between electric and hydraulic. Is that you got to make sure that your hydraulic fluid's topped up, that you do your zero pressure tests. Whereas electric turrets, there's none of that. There's no hydraulic fluid to be used in the turret.
Is it a lot faster to traverse with the electric?
They're about the same, to
Okay.
be honest. They're all about the same. It's just more about maintenance.
Right. Which one do you prefer?
Electric turrets, because the amount of times I spent in an A4 cranking the manual traverse to move the gun, not because anything was broken, just because when you're inside, you don't use the power to traverse the gun. It takes quite a while, and it's not that it's hard; it's just tedious
Right.
because it takes so long to do it. And sometimes you get guys that are new and they're like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go as fast as they can," and they, for like a degree, they do very well. and then the rest of it, it's just like they go like 2 feet and then they stop because they're tired, and then another
Oh.
2 feet, and then they keep going, and then you just know that they just burnt themselves out.
You're a qualified Leopard 2 gunner, and how's the fire control system in that?
Honestly, it was designed that if the Cold War had to go hot, they can take any sort of German citizen off the street and pluck them in that turret and be like, you know, go shoot some tanks.
Hmm.
It's really that simple. It's literally like playing a video game. It's the craziest thing how intuitive it is in terms of like using your hands and how everything is laid out. It's very ergonomical in terms of like where the gunner actually needs to use his stuff.
Okay. And in terms of like using the thermals and the gun sights, would you say like there's a lot of training involved, and just does it calculate your targets for you and your turn and all that stuff?
So how it works is that you have these laser switches on your palm controller that are right next to your thumbs.
Hmm.
On the A4, you can rock when you rock them out. It gives you one lays, right? If you get a double return, it'll always give you the, I believe, the longest or the shortest range. It's one of the two, but
Mm.
it'll give you one of those. Whereas the A4M and the sorry, just the A6M, if you if you get a double return saying like, okay, this is the first laser return, and then let's say hit another object farther than that, it'll give you the second one. You can choose if it's closer or longer.
Okay.
Then you got your lead locks right next to your thumbs as well, so you hold those and you can like guide the target. Obviously, your triggers where your index fingers are, your TI, which is your thermal imager, is to
Mm.
your right. It takes a while to cool down. Yes, it cools down,
Okay.
so that your thermals can actually work. You have a whole bunch of buttons to your right in terms of like setting your battle button, which is just telling the computer keep the laser or keep the ballistic computer at 1,000. Um, the max effective range of the Leopard is 4K.
Okay.
The ballistic computer will not calculate farther than 4K. So you can laze technically something out to 6,500. It'll give you the range, but it'll only input 4K into the ballistic computer.
Right.
So basically everything is laze and blaze, and if you miss, you just adjust your target. Dictating on what the target is, you can switch from HE, heat, sabo, canister. Although I don't know why you would use canister because it's kind of eh. But it's a very intuitive fire control system that really does work in the favor of the crew. It rarely misses its target, very rarely, and when it does, it's mostly because of crew error,
Mm.
um, or there's something actually wrong with the computer. It's that accurate. I've hit targets at 2K pinpoint, no problem.
How often would you have like computer errors or like just stuff not working on the fire control system?
Not often enough where I know every single problem, but often enough where I recognize that something
Mm.
is wrong.
Right.
Um, but the thing is that tanks just do that. Tanks just love to break for some reason. It's
Yeah.
just how it's the way that it was told to me was like, imagine getting your gaming computer, smashing it on the ground about 1,000 times, and then try putting it back together and see how well it would work.
Oh, very unlikely.
Well, like, very unlikely.
Yeah.
And the way we use our tanks is very aggressively, right? We bush bash, we go 70 kilometers on black tracks, like we go and destroy the enemy very
Right.
fast, very aggressively. It's just something we do. It's how we get our job done. So when things break, especially when the fire control system breaks, uh it gets very annoying because sometimes it's just as stupid as like a gyro is gone. So like when you're in stab, your gun will start like vibrating,
Right.
or as serious as like your turret is not moving for some reason, even in observe. So you have your like different like firing modes. You have observe, and then you have stab on. Um, Sometimes both of them just didn't want to work for some reason, which is a big problem. So things like that can happen, but then they get fixed relatively fast. As fast as someone can get something fixed like a tank fast.
Right. And you guys
and
have
fire.
like dedicated maintenance crews to do all that, right?
Yeah, yeah. Every single squadron should have EO techs, which and weapons techs and vehicle techs, and that they make sure that the vehicles and our tanks are all good to go. And they do a very good job at it.
Mm.
Like the shout out to the maintainers at C Squadron. Like you guys do a fantastic job.
And how often, like, would your tank break down during the middle of a training? Like, I'm assuming that's gonna be pretty annoying, like, pretty irritating when your tank just breaks down in the middle of your training X or something like that.
How often do they break?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. They I'm telling you, tanks are very good at two things: killing and breaking. they I they sometimes like they just break out of nowhere and you're just like, I just fixed that, and you just don't know why it keeps breaking. Um we had a sergeant go through 7 sprockets in a week, and it
Oh
was
my
just
goodness.
because his final drive was all screwed up. Um like just things don't work sometimes, and with tanks that ends up being, you know if I'm not putting at least like 20 to 30 liters of oil in my tank every single week, I get scared
Hmm.
because I know something big is about to happen and it's not fun.
Right. So I guess let's talk about like your crewmates. As a gunner, describe what is it like to work with other crews, like your loader, your commander, and driver, and how much teamwork and communication is required.
Tons. Tons and tons and tons. Like, you cannot operate without your crew commander. You cannot really communicate well with your loader if you don't know if you don't see that your loader is out of the way out of that gun. uh I know the gun won't fire because he didn't because the loader controls the index of the
Right.
round. But let's say he presses the fire button and you see on your screen that you can fire, and you fire and he's not out of the way, you could have killed him, you could have
Oh.
done something. So the tank can be very it's not just about communication in order to obtain an objective in your mission, it's also for the crew safety.
Hmm.
So that gun will swing back, and I've seen it do damage to people. It's not fun.
Hmm.
So the crew commander needs to communicate to his crew what's going on. The loader basically needs to tell the commander what rounds we have left, what he's doing with the coax, because if there's a stoppage with the coax, he needs to be the one that relieves it. The gunner needs to be able to communicate to everybody what he sees if he sees something and if he's hit the target, and the driver needs to tell the crew commander if something is wrong with the tank. Everyone is consistently talking to each other in the vehicle to tell them what's going on. It's not like in Fury, where like it sometimes happens, but that more or less happens when you're in a hide.
Hmm.
Usually, most of the time, we're actually like focused on what we're doing. Like, I'm scanning, my crew commander's talking to the other call signs, my loader is also helping him scan with NVGs, my driver's trying not to kill us. It's a massive teamwork effort, and even to keep that vehicle up and running is a massive team effort.
Yeah.
um, so if one person stops communicating, the whole tank doesn't work, doesn't matter
Oh.
who it is.
Wow. That's actually pretty crazy. And I guess when you're like on trainings and X's and stuff like that, like how rewarding is that to have a good team in your tank?
It's honestly one of the best feelings. I've had my one crew the whole time since I've been um at C Squadron,
Hmm.
when I first got to my first fighting troop, and it was probably the best crew I've ever. Like, out
Eh,
of all the crews that are at that squadron, our crew is hands down like the most. I enjoyed it. It was fantastic. We had like, my warrant was fucking just switched on. Our loader was funny, made us laugh. He was also really good. Our driver knew his maintenance. I was, doing my job and gunning. We were all just really, like, we just knew our jobs and we just did them extremely well. I was a little bit slower on the maintenance side because maintenance wasn't my forte, so I would
hmm.
stick with the driver sometimes and try to learn off of what he was doing. Um, and we would give each other pointers. It was a good time.
Hmm.
That's the best part of when everything works and you're in a crew that works together. It's fantastic. And literally, you're probably one of the strongest tank crews out there if you guys all get together.
Right. And do you stick with the same crew throughout the whole time?
It depends. It can depend from crew to crew if someone gets hurt or if a tank goes down. Depends on the tank. You could be switching crews. They tend not to like it because once you get with a crew, you know how everyone kind of works,
Yeah.
right? So once you put that person in another crew, they really don't know how that other crew commander or loader or driver is gonna uh, jive with each other, right? Because they could
Right.
have different individual SOPs for everybody, right?
And how often do you like switch roles? Like for example, like you might become a loader in the next tank or something, and then maybe back to a
Uh,
gunner.
Not often.
Not often.
Uh, what it usually happens, so once you're slated as a gunner for that year, you're usually a gunner unless something else happens. You're slated on the orbat every single year as a certain job, and then once you can prove that you're done your job correctly, you get moved up to the next position, and then the next position, and then the next position. So for if I was a gunner and then all of a sudden got pulled out to do a loader's job, um, it's probably because that loader got hurt or they, something happened or our tank went down and they need a loader and blah blah blah. But it doesn't just happen like, okay, we're gonna switch loaders now or we're gonna switch
Hmm.
gunners now. It doesn't happen.
So, do other people in the tank like would they know other like procedures? So, for example, like if you're trained as a loader, like would you be trained as a driver and even maybe a gunner? Like, do they?
Usually that's the case.
Okay.
So with gunner loader, you usually get them at the same time. At least that's how they did it at our squadron. Um, there's actually a lot of gunners and loaders that actually can't be a driver
Oh.
because they're too tall.
Ah.
So they don't pass this thing called the boss test. So it basically measures out to say, okay, if we were hit by a mine, how would you fare? You're too tall, so you can't drive. So you have crew commanders sometimes that aren't drivers, gunners and loaders. It's actually quite often that's
Hmm.
the case. But we still have a lot of drivers and a lot of crew commanders that are driver qualified.
Okay. So yeah, different people have different qualifications and multiples too. So
Correct.
yeah. I guess in terms of procedure and comms, like the Americans, they usually say, gunner sable tank, and then on the way. Um, I guess what's the procedures for Canadians in that? Like, is it the same? Is it different? Maybe.
So how it goes for Canadians is that you got ammo select. This is crew commander given fire order. So you'd have your ammo type, your technique, description of the target, and then confirmation of lay. And then your gunner would respond with the confirmation of lay of the gun, and then the range. Your crew commander would then give you the fire order, and then the gunner would respond with firing now. So, as an example, I'll just go through a full one. Crew
Sure.
commander would go Sabo lays tank on, right? Your gunner would be like on 1500. Crew commander would say fire, and then the gunner would say firing now. Boom. If he hits the target, he would say target, and then depending on the crew commander, he can say target stop, and then or if the gunner hits the target and sees that there's a confirmation of it being destroyed, the gunner can then go say target destroyed, and then once your crew commander says target stop, uh, the loader puts the gun on safe, and then this is my favorite drill.
Mm.
It's battle main start mode. That's
Oh.
how you reset the gun to 1,000, right? So after every single engagement, you're resetting the gun to main and putting on your battle.
Mm. So does that mean you're like resetting the range like to
So
where it's normally at?
the battle button is just telling the ballistic computer to keep the range and the ballistic input at 1,000 meters. So
Mm.
that way, if something just comes out of nowhere, you can just shoot at it or BOT it, right?
Ah, okay. Got it.
Which is burst on target.
Hmm.
So just guiding rounds essentially.
Like, is it manually guiding or just are you using the?
Manually, like when you're BOTing, it's manually guiding. So let's say there's a target and you miss and you're like low and to the left, you would write an ad.
So you adjust manually from there.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about the loaders. Aside from doing the important job of reloading the rounds, how important are they, and do they act as the 2IC, similar to the US armored system?
They're in fact very important. Usually the loader, what they'll be doing is that if the crew commander's too busy on the radio, he'll be the one that's up at the hatch, and he's actually crew commanding the tank, giving advice to the crew commander, actually navigating as well. Basically, he's the mom of the tank, or she's the
Mm,
mom of the tank, right? He or she's the mom of the tank. And they'll cook our rations. They'll make sure we're all good to go. They'll help us with maintenance. If anything is going on and the crew commander needs to stay on the radio, they'll come and, they're they're moms. They're basically making sure that, dad doesn't come down and beat us and that we do everything good for dad.
right. So would you like to be the loader then, if you had a choice?
Um, if I had a choice and I had these things called scopolamine patches, because or I didn't have scopolamine patches, because scopolamine patches, what they did is I got massive motion sickness in the turret, and I
Uh,
had to wear these things because I would puke like a madman. Like, I mean, 16 hours straight.
have you puked
Um,
in the tank?
Oh, oh yeah, oh yeah. Not even competition. It got so bad. I got a garbage bag and I taped it to my legs. So whenever I had to puke, I would just spread my legs and then just like puke onto the into the
That's
garbage bag
gross.
that was on the floor. It's what you have to do, and I'd be like middle of puking and like engaging targets, or like puking and like saying I see a target. You have to do your job. Like, I did it for 20. I was puking for 20 hours straight once. It's not fun, but you have to do your job, and then you
Right.
learn like, okay, I get motion sick. So
So,
if I
yep,
if I didn't have my patches and they needed a loader, hands down, I would love to be a loader. But my calling is to be a gunner. I love being in my gunner's hole. If I can be in there forever and not get motion sick, I would do it.
nice. Okay. Like, do they not give you meds to take care of your like your? I
They
guess.
used to.
Okay.
They used to. The biggest problem is that they're like the actual patches are like, there's a big problem with them. Like, they people started losing eyesight,
Oh.
and because it doesn't, like, I don't know how to say it, sucks all the moisture out of your body, so you don't feel like you have to puke,
Hmm.
and you don't puke. So a lot of people, because they weren't drinking water or some other things, they would actually lose some of their eyesight. It would come back later, but
Yeah.
they would lose their eyesight. So they actually pulled it for a bit from the calf. But I'm pretty, like, I've bought them off the store shelves. They come in like packs of 2 or 3, and you put them right behind your ear, and you don't feel sick. And they're not that expensive. They're like $20 for a pack, but each
Mhm.
patch lasts for like 3 days.
Hey all, thanks for watching the first part of the interview with John, who is a Leopard 2 gunner. Make sure to check out part 2 of this interview. If you enjoyed this, make sure to leave a like and to subscribe to stay up to date. Make sure to check out his channel as well. Stay blessed, and I'll see you in the next video.